Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Josh, and that is our guest tonight, Reverend Shawn P. Wittington. And this is Conversations on the Fringe. We come to you every Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we talk about those topics that are out there in the fringe, that are paranormal, that are esoteric, that normally don't come up in regular conversation. And the reason we do that is because, knowledge is power, and I think that getting information out there, seeing different perspectives on everything in the world is what benefits us as humanity and helps us evolve and grow spiritually and grow, in this world that we live in. Reverend Shawn P. Wittington is an ordained exorcism and deliverance minister, ghostbuster, lecturer, and teacher of the paranormal studies at the Bible College and Theological Seminary. Him and his wife, who is also an ordained Lutheran minister and intuitive, are both survivors of extreme demonic attacks and together have over 40 years of the field of experience. They founded and operate Ghost Be Gone, which is a spiritual warfare-based service based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, assisting in the paranormal problems of various types and severity. In 2016, Shawn is the host of the Las Vegas Supernatural radio show, which can be heard Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on KCOR Radio. That's kcoreradio.com. God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. Shawn, how you doing tonight?
Josh, I am blessed, and you are a blessed individual too. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I like that at the beginning you almost called me Doc.
I did.
And I think, I was thinking about going for a doctorate, and then that would be the title. It would be Dr. Reverend Shawn Wittington. So that still may happen.
Well, it's I always get it confused. I whenever I see Reverend, I always think Doctor for some reason. It's like when I see King of clubs, right? I always think G, the letter G. I don't know why. It's just one of those weird things, association of the mind. But Reverend. So you have an interesting title, an interesting history. Where do we even begin? Can you take me back to how you kind of said, "Hey, look, I'm going to go in and help people," reduce all this stuff that's happening in their life in the sense of demonic abilities? Did you first become a reverend, then get into it? What happened when you're a child? Where to start? Help us start here.
How long do we got?
We got an hour and a half, so feel free to tell the whole story, but nothing but the story.
It's you probably know the feeling. Mm-hmm. You tell stories so many times. They don't get boring to you and you enjoy it, but you begin to wonder if you're boring other people. And I was been told many times, no, if somebody asks you something that they're legitimately interested in wanting to know your story, share it. So I'm just going to I'll give you the abridged version, but it's not that short of an answer. In my heart of hearts and in my soul, I believe I was created by our Creator to be on the exact path that I'm on right now. And so I have to include my father and mother, may they rest in peace, in the story. My father was a 25-year plus retired Master Chief Radioman from the United States Navy. He served in both World War II, Korea, Purple Heart recipient, Naval Intelligence. He met my mother. She was Brazilian. I don't know exactly when they met, but he was stationed down in Brazil after the war, working for the diplomatic corps for the ambassador to Brazil. Met my mother. They fell in love. They got married. Had my two older sisters down there. When they were still very young, they moved back to the States, and they were stationed on a naval base in Northern California. Mm-hmm. He went out to sea. My mother was devoutly religious woman and very spiritual. He went out to sea or overseas on some type of mission, came back with, I know I'm going to forget a few diseases here, but he came back with spinal meningitis, cephalitis, among some other things, and he was essentially dying, and he was out of his mind. So they had him strapped to a hospital bed. Well, my mother gets a phone call from the base doctor telling her that if she wants to see her husband alive again, to come now, because they don't expect him to survive till morning. So he She goes. I don't remember. No, I wasn't born
Yeah.
yet, so I don't know what she did with my sisters. Probably gave them to a neighbor or had somebody come over to babysit them. She's headed down to the hospital, and she tells me the story of deciding to stop at the base hospital to say a prayer. And she went into the church, and she wasn't supposed to have any more children. The birth of my second oldest sister was very difficult on her, so there were no plans for more children in the marriage. She begs God to spare my father's life, and she promises him that if he does that, she will, from that day forward until she's too old and can't do it any longer, whenever she goes to church, she'll do it on her hands and knees, and she'll have another child. She goes to the hospital. She falls asleep at my father's bedside, and when she wakes up that morning, my dad is sitting up. He's totally fine. She screams, of course, gets the doctors and nurses in there. They ran all these tests on him. They couldn't find any signs of the diseases in him at all anymore. So she kept her end of the bargain, and until she was too old and couldn't do it any longer, when she went to church, she did it on her hands and knees, and she had another child, Donna, yours truly.
Love it.
Told me when I was a little kid one day I would do something great for God. I'm not sure if she knew exactly what that was. I sure didn't. But almost a whole lifetime later, that all I realized, that um, somehow she knew something that nobody else knew, and including
Yeah.
me. And now I know that what that was. And I've only been ordained 5, 6 years now. So I met my wife 20 years ago. She's same passionate person about the paranormal as I am. We hit it off. We started a team. But it wasn't until about 5 years after we met that all these years, I've been seeing ghosts since I was a little kid. Started ghost busting when I was 10. All these years later, never really ran into anything extremely malevolent or demonic until this one case with my wife,
Hmm.
which was a bad one. We got followed home by something that took up residence in our home for about 8 weeks. My wife was the real target of that attack. And long story short, it was while trying to fight whatever that was in the home, I reached out into the paranormal community, and I met my then mentor, who is now retired. She was an exorcist, took me under her wing, helped me fight this thing out of my home. And she said she saw something, even then, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. She said, "You need to continue this training, finish my course, go to the next level, and become ordained." And so I steal a comment of hers that I used to hear her tell people. I got into this field, literally drug into it, kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Um, and so the rest is history. My wife is uh, still here. God bless her. She wasn't. She This demonic attack that she came under left
Yeah.
her with 3 very rare forms of cancer,
Oh wow.
which we fought for her life for a number of years. Still with us, still hanging in there. She still goes on the occasional case with me. I finished my training. I got ordained. And the odd thing is, odd or funny, however you want to look at it, ever since I got ordained, that's the only type of case pretty much that comes across my desk now are ugly, demonic, violent haunts. I get the occasional paranormal investigator might call me and say, "Listen, I'm new to the field. Thought I would jump into this because it seemed cool. Didn't really know what I was doing. Found myself at the wrong place at the wrong time. Said and did the wrong thing. Now I've got some type of attachment. Can you help me?"
Yeah.
But I don't really per se go out and do any more real just ghost hunts just to hunt. And that's the abridged version, pretty much created to do this, I believe, in my heart of hearts. Been seeing ghosts since I was little.
Yeah.
A lot of years behind me, ghost busting. I hid that secret, my ability to see spirit and my passion for ghost busting. I hid that from a lot of friends because when you're young, you're worried about having friends and if people are going to think you're weirder than they already think you are. You're not going to have any friends if you come out with a secret like that. I regret that now, but then I did what I did, and it was just something I kept kind of on the down low. Only my closest friends and inner circle knew of my passion for the paranormal and being able to see and feel spirit, and the rest is history. And now I'm here with Josh Reed on Conversations on the Fringe, so it's not going to get any better. I can retire now.
Awesome, man. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. Tell me a little bit about these experiences you had. Now, kind of like, so we're no strangers here. I've had similar experiences in my life, whether it was paranormal, seeing ghosts, having very, very weird and unusual phenomena. In the sense of demonic or attached beings, I've had a few experiences with that in the past, which caused me to get out of an occult practice that I used to be in, kind of Enochian magic type of stuff. I moved away from that because a lot of weird things started to happen, but it came through my curiosity in my earlier life because I saw things that weren't necessarily there. My brothers did too, and my family did. It's just kind of one of those things. I guess we're from a line of gypsies. I don't know. But tell me about your experiences and what you had growing up, the type of experiences you had. Were these, benevolent, malevolent?
To be honest with you, when I was a little kid, I was freaked out. I didn't know what they were. I just saw these people that I didn't know. They weren't friends of the family. They weren't family. Strange people standing around the house at different times, staring at me. I would tell my mom about it. And she just kept it so simple. She said, and now, again, I don't know how... I know she was sensitive, intuitive also. Mm-hmm. How she knew this, that could be the only reason. She said, you're going to see a lot of ghosts in your life. They're just people that don't have a body any longer. If you see one, there's a reason why it's manifesting to you. Ask it what it wants. If there's something you can help it with, or if it has a message for you, great. If you can't help it and it's freaking you out, just ask the spirit to leave you alone and not bother you any longer. And that worked for some. Some seem to have a little more darker agenda in their approach and the feeling I got from them. And I'm not going to say for sure that they were demonic, but there were many times I was the type of kid that was constantly bouncing off the walls. My mother would try to, when I was very little, try to get me to take a nap every afternoon with her. And she would tell me what we're going to do when we take a nap, because I'm freaked out now. I don't want to take a nap.
Yeah.
When we take a nap, I'm going to grab a good hold of your leg, and I want you to grab a handful of my hair and don't let go. And that way you won't have to worry about the bad ones taking you anywhere or taking you from me. So I never really had the chance before she passed to ask her exactly what she meant by that. Obviously, there was maybe something a little more sinister other than just your run-of-the-mill ghost or spirit that was visiting me, that from time to time that may have had a different agenda. So that was it, just occasionally seeing ghosts and ignoring it, not letting it make me go crazy. And many times, many times, even to this day, I would see things, hear things, feel things that I thought, I'm going crazy. Even to this day, once a month, once every couple of months, I sit down with a psychologist and or a psychiatrist, just talk for an hour or two. And because the last thing you need is an exorcist coming to your house who's crazy. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure I'm not. And therefore, flip side of that coin, I don't help anybody who... It's heartbreaking because I met many people that I knew were possessed, but were also clinically diagnosed with a mental disorder under the care of a doctor on meds, and legally you can't do anything. You're caught between a rock and a hard spot, literally.
Yeah.
So that's a heartbreaking part of this story, but it is what it is, and I made it through all of that. I wish I had, for lack of a better term, came out of the closet with a lot of other close friends earlier, but I didn't, and I probably didn't really start coming out of the closet with it till after I got out of the Navy, which would be my mid-20s.
Okay.
And, so I just turned 62. My gosh.
What? You look young.
Yeah. Just turned 62, and I realized I wasted a lot of, in this field that is, I wasted a lot of time where I probably could have done more good or helped more people or had the chance to be more honest with more people and maybe got more help myself. But, it was cool that, for me, it was cool that my mother knew, and she was very supportive. and a lot of people reach out to me thinking their children are what they once thought were imaginary friends turn out to be something more, or their children are very psychic, and they want to know how to handle that. And my advice is always to reach out to try to find someone who's the parent of a psychic kid, but be supportive. And if you truly believe that it's something more than just an imaginary friend, be supportive and get the appropriate help that you need.
Yeah.
Because children are at such a fragile psychological state going through those types of things, and it can just really scar them and twist their psyche for life if they don't get the help they need and the support.
Right, 100%. Side note, you were in the Navy. I was in the Navy for just under 10 years, so both
Good
both
for you,
Navy
brother.
vets. We picked the right one. We picked the right one. That's right.
I am the first to admit I didn't enjoy it. I used to call my dad all the time and tell him things that I was going through that I didn't like.
Yeah.
And he would just say, listen, it's not my Navy anymore. And when you're done doing your thing, you want to come home, go for it. And as soon as I could, I got out. I look back and I realize if I had known then what I know now, I could have done, on my head, standing on my head, I could have done 15 years and retired and now be pulling down a little bit of a pension from them.
Yep.
But that didn't happen. But there's so many things I've experienced that I don't think I would have had I stayed in for the 15 years. So.
Well, life went on the path that it was supposed to go on. I mean, it's the path
you
that
were
God
close. 10 years. What?
I got injured.
At 10 years. Oh, okay.
I got injured, and they were going to med board me. They disqualified me from sea duty. I was on shore duty in Washington, D.C. I got injured, had a surgery, and the surgery was botched after 9 months of relearning the walk. The screws in my leg popped out and then went in and caused havoc in my knee. They suspended me from sea duty. Basically, were going to med board me. I ended up taking an early out, and I got out at just under 10 years. Wow. And I would have retired this year. And I look back on it, and I'm a little sad because I really did enjoy it to an extent. But I would not be the person I am today. I would not be who I am today. I would not know the things that I know today if it wasn't for those experiences of going through, in a sense, the trauma that the military put me through during that time frame, because they were really parasitic towards me. They wanted me out of their way. They didn't want to deal with me. My command hated me. And so it was a really crazy. It was actually during the same time that all that other stuff was happening in my life, in the sense of having this entity in my house that, to give you an idea, I came home one night and we had a pineapple, and we had like kind of an L-shaped kitchen. So the sink was over here and then you had the countertop here, and my wife put a pineapple on the countertop right here. And I walked, me and her walked out to go to the living room, which is just right around the corner. And we walk out and we hear, shoo, boom, kung, kung, kung. I'm like, what was that? We go back in the kitchen, the pineapple's upside down in the middle of the sink. So the pineapple goes from here and turns upside down in the middle of the sink. We had a big old black spoon that we used to scoop dog food out of, and it sits on top of the dog kennel. It just went missing one day. I picked it up, I set it down on top of the kennel. I turn around like this, I turn back around, it's gone. Shows up 2 weeks later after we changed out the dog kennel, changed the sheets, everything. All of a sudden just shows right back up on top there. One day the TV was turning on and off. And I was in... I've been studying occultism, magic, these types of things for a very long time. Not Harry Potter stuff, the real legitimate stuff of kind of how the occult world came about. Although at the time, I wasn't very knowledgeable on how to contain and control various aspects of it. And this, as you know, this is how people get in trouble. Yeah. Is when they go into these things with a lack of knowledge and something comes out that they didn't really want. This thing, I don't think it was demonic. I don't think it was evil in any way. It was a trickster, which can be, but it wasn't doing anything evil or mean or demonic, and it wasn't tormenting or haunting. It was more trying to get attention.
Yeah.
It was more just trying to capture our attention. I immediately turned to a community out there in Alexandria, Virginia, which I was very, very well integrated into. Sacred Circle, the Sacred Circle store down there in Old Town Alexandria. We got a psychic to come in, and she helped us out and got us all through it, and eventually that went away. And I put the book away for a very long time. I never even looked back into that world because it scared the living daylights out of me. Like, whoa, this is some real deal stuff. And even though nothing evil came out of it, I realized the power and the potency of it. And now what we do is we help unveil what is happening in the real world right now with how this, what I would consider a satanic, a Luciferian, deceptive agenda is occurring in a very occult practice, sacrificial, ritualistic, throughout the world. And people need to wake up and open their eyes to what is happening. And I'm pretty sure I can probably guess this, that you've seen an uptick and demonic possessions and happenings throughout the last few years.
Do I have it here to show you? I was just looking at this and showing my wife this. I probably left it in the kitchen with her to look at.
Yeah.
A stack of this week's people who have reached out to me on my website needing help. And it's gotten to be so overwhelming that it takes me just about a week to get through a week's worth of people reaching out to me before I go back and check again. And now I have the following week's people that have reached out to me, and it's another stack. It was never like that 2 years ago. Within the last, I want to say, year and a half, 2 years, it's gotten like that. So now what I do, and when the pandemic hit and we went into the first initial lockdown, I decided, I'm just going to ride this thing out for the safety of my wife and I and my clients. I'm just going to try and do my best to work cases via Zoom, via StreamYard, Skype, interviews, things of that nature, rather than physically going and working these cases until, we got a handle on whatever this is that we don't have a handle on yet.
Yeah.
And what it's done was the silver lining in that dark cloud was I became a much better counselor. And it helped me help people more realize that, and it's something I always knew, that they are truly the ones that have the power to turn their lives around. They reach out to somebody like me for help. I don't have any magic powers. There's nothing special about me. I'm just like you. But I help people draw their line in the sand, circle the wagons, tell them what they need to do to put up a good fight, put my arm around them, help them, feel like they've got somebody to stand up against that bully. But they truly are the ones that have the power ultimately to change things around for them. So that helped me become a better counselor. But yeah, the uptake in people reaching out for help is just, I'm constantly referring cases out to other deliverance ministers whose load's not as big. A lot of people I don't get to, I have to just send them, an email, text message, what have you. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. It might be a little bit. Hang in there. It's big uptake. And I would suspect some of the things you've mentioned earlier in the show and in the green room before we even got started.
Yeah.
Some of the, demonic forces behind all of this probably directly have something to do with the pandemic too.
Yep.
We're in for it's going to get a lot uglier before it gets better. I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think it's end of times. I do see us coming out of it and getting the upper hand on this. I think that Satan is near the end of his whatever reign it was he was given for 1,000 years or whatever. I think they're coming to the end of that. We all know who ends up winning the war, but in war, many battles are lost, and even I have lost many battles. Won a lot, lost a lot, but I do believe he's near the end of his reign, and so they are pulling out all the stops, going for broke, swinging for the barn, if you will, and people that don't have faith, don't believe in the power of prayer, aren't practicing trying to tap into whatever higher vibrational power of love and light that's up there watching over all of this, whatever name you want to attach to it, whatever religious belief system you're from. If you're not tapping into that right now and trying to be the best version of yourself that you can be every day, you're in trouble. You're gonna be a casualty of war, and trust me, you don't want to be a casualty of this war because it's eternal damnation.
Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about the spirit world, the evilness that lurks in at least that side of the spirit world, how they're coming over, what they're coming over to, and what you do as a deliverance minister to get rid of them. The process, how you utilize it, and what you're kind of doing in your everyday flow.
Well, I'm a big keep it simple type of guy. So, I'm a baptized Catholic
Mm-hmm.
and ordained through a Christian university, though. If I belong to a diocese, because I have that paranormal background, if I belonged to a diocese or was attached to a diocese, I probably would have been excommunicated a long time ago. You can't, I'm a when in Rome kind of guy, and I'm also a keep it simple kind of guy.
Yeah.
I was raised that demons are fallen angels. So that's how I approach it. I'm not a demonologist. I don't study demonology, and I'll tell you why. And I don't judge anybody that does, and I know many very
Mm-hmm.
talented, blessed, gifted demonologists. That just happens to work for them. In my training, I don't go down that path. For me, it can be very dangerous. My gift of discernment, I count on that to kind of guide me and tell me what to do during malevolent cases, or God forbid, if I have to take authority over an exorcism, to tell me, what my next step should be, rather than, I'm going through the motions and doing what I'm supposed to do. But there are times during an exorcism where my discernment, the Holy Spirit will tell me, now you should ask its name. Now you should ask how many there are.
Right.
Now you should ask how it entered. Now you should ask when it's going to leave. Other than that, I just, I follow instructions and I go with my training, and I don't encourage dialogue with the demon because there's no truth in them. And so it can be very dangerous. Mentioning their names, studying them too much, I believe, gives them a certain amount of power.
Yep.
Weakens you and strengthens them. So I don't go down that route. I don't believe in religious provocation. Why poke the bear? I show up at these locations. If there's truly the presence of the demonic there, when I show up, it's already provoking them. So why make things worse? Just go in, take care of your business, and because you're also responsible for the family that you're trying to help, especially if there's children and animals present, which always become targets when these nasty, disgusting, perverted creatures get provoked, and it doesn't take much to provoke them. They're in a 24/7 constant provoked state of mind. They're just psychotic.
Yeah.
They always go after the real weak, the children and the animals. So it's a fine line, and you have to take responsibility over that. You don't want to do anything that's going to cause these entities to lash out at the family more than they already are doing so. So the veil, I believe, is as thin as it's ever been in my lifetime, and they're everywhere. You got to be careful what you say, what you do. They're always around. They're always listening. They're always waiting for you to say and do something that they can conscrew and take and use as permission. You gave me permission to attach to you,
Yeah.
to enter your life and attach to you. And they're big on that, the permission. And so you just got to be very, very careful with that. And it's much different than a haunt. Haunts are just, spirits and ghosts roaming around a location for whatever reason. The demonic, it's life and death.
Yeah.
Haunts, not so much. A demonic case is for lack of a better term, if you're not careful, somebody's going to lose their life, and it's not to enter into this field lightly, for sure.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start talking about some things that potentially could get a little dark on that end. And you've talked about this before before we got on here, that you could have bad things happen to the stream, that you have bad encounters, things can move around. Do you want to go ahead and say a prayer before we go into this next part and before we start really talking about this type of stuff? Because I know that'll make all them feel a lot better, and I know it'll probably make me feel a lot better because. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about some examples of the things that you've operated with. And like you just said, talking about it can give it power.
Yes.
And so we need protection before any of that happens.
Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Lord Jesus Christ, in thy name, I ask thee to bind and silence all powers and forces that do not accept thee as Lord and King. In the air, in the water, in the ground, the netherworld, and nature, and the spiritual world. I ask thee to bind all demonic action and demonic communication. Lord, seal this whole place, all of us here, and all of our intentions in the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Mary, we ask thee to surround us with thy mantle of protection and crush Satan's power in our lives. St. Michael the Archangel, we ask all our guardian angels to defend us in battle against Satan and the powers of darkness. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you much for that. So,
you're welcome, brother.
Talk to me a little bit about some of these examples of these cases that you've been on, and kind of maybe what it looks like when you go in, the type of calls that you get, what people are experiencing, and then what you experience when you go in.
Haunts are interesting because you always want to know why is this spirit there and who is this spirit. Like I said, I keep things simple. I may get a client's address, call the county assessor, and try and find out what was on the property before they built a home, if anybody died in the home before these people took the residence over. I talk to the people. I send out an intake form. I usually lose about 75% of my clients when I send out the intake form, because I require, whether it's a demonic case or a haunting, I require the whole family, everybody that's under that roof, to sit down as a family unit, fill out the intake form together. Mm-hmm. And the intake form can take 2.5, 3 hours to fill out. So if people aren't at that rock bottom, if they're not hanging on the edge of the abyss with their fingernails, completely just at rock bottom spiritually and everything else, and not ready to do that, then they don't want to work that hard for it, and I just don't hear back from them. But the people that finish the form, I get it back. I've already had an initial interview with them on the phone. My wife and I read the intake form. Afterwards, there's a follow-up phone interview, or in person like you and I on the internet. Then we will decide what our next plan of action should be, and it's usually, at the very least, come over there, see what we see, feel what we feel, and then decide on what we're going to do. I would say we never leave a location without at least blessing and cleansing the property and the home and everybody in the home. And if it's a haunt, it's pretty, by the numbers, not that difficult to deal with. If it's a demonic case, we've already know before we go there what we're up against. And if it's just an infestation and it's been going on for a while, and one or more people in the family are oppressed, but there's no real possession going on, then we pretty much do the same thing. Go do a thorough cleansing, blessing of the property and the home. What's really important also is things can get a lot worse really quick. I let people know how I'm going to approach the case. And if they're not 100% on board, I don't try to convert anybody to Catholicism or Christianity, but they have to be on board with what I'm going to do and have faith and believe in what I'm going to do and help me help them, or things are going to get worse. Yeah. So rather than allow that to happen, if they're not 100% on board with my approach, I usually gracefully bow out of the situation and start to try and find another team to go in there and try and help them. because, like I said, things can get worse very quickly. So if it is a possession case, God forbid, then I reach out to everybody in the exorcism network that I belong to, and we do something that we refer to as exorcism by distance. I usually give the client name, their address, the exact date I'm going to go there, who's going to be with me, and at that time I'm going to take authority over an exorcism, and we're going to perform the rites. And I ask that everybody available worldwide in that network at that time, if they could drop into deep meditative prayer for us and help us that way. And I've found that I've crunched the numbers. Cases where I'm able to get the network involved, far more closure comes to those cases and a good ending than the ones where it's Johnny on the spot. I don't think somebody's possessed. I go to do a house blessing and a cleansing, baptize everybody in the home, take confession, baptize everybody, instruct them to either get back to church, get communion, or go to a non-denominational Christian church and get baptized again, complete submersion in the holy waters. Yeah, it's just very, people have to be on board, and I hate to say buy into what you're trying to get across to them,
Mm-hmm.
but if they're not, things can be get really bad. So I wake up every morning and pray that I never have to take authority over another exorcism, because they're just that scary. I'm only human. They're just
Yeah.
that scary, and there's times where I get quite frightened, and you have to be as close to being in a state of grace as you can going to do these. I'll go to confession, I'll go to church, I'll receive communion, then I'll go there. But I'll give you an example. I know an exorcist who was attacked by the client, badly attacked by the client that he was performing the rites on, and he got so angry at the client or the entity for attacking him that he spent hours continuing on and on and on with the rites, and it was getting nowhere, and things were getting worse and worse and worse. It finally dawned on him why, and it was because he got mad, and the demon had twisted that and was using his anger to strengthen itself and hang on and put his talons in even deeper into the situation and continue to fight. So he had to stop the procedure right then, go out into the garage, and thank God there was another priest there to give him confession, and absolve him of all his sins. And then he had to come in and completely forget that situation had happened. So you have to be very careful how you feel when you go into these things. And like I said, we're only human. You're going to have times where you feel all the feelings that God gave you to experience. But if it gets to be too overwhelming, and you find that you're not on your A game, and you're not, extremely focused on the business at hand right then, it's best to just call a halt to everything and step back, take a deep breath, regroup. Um, Usually by that time, you have to wait for a break, because if the demon has already manifested itself through the client, things are a little crazy at that time. You have to wait for the break. They come in these manifestations come in breaks, and then when it comes to a time where the demon has taken a break, you can shut everything down for a little while and come back. I know exorcists that have been on exorcism cases for weeks and months.
Wow.
It is what it is. It's not like in the movies where, it's
3 hours and
yeah. Well, actually, I've done quite a few of those, but many times just showing up and saying certain prayers and having everybody on board, and baptizing them, and getting them on board with where you're coming from, usually will take care of the issue. It's much easier for these entities to go down the street and find the next easy victim than it is to sit there and fight, unless there's they have a real reason, and they believe they've got permission to be there.
Yeah.
And then it's tough. You've got to you can't go back to when the deed was done and undo the deed, but you can, with faith and the power of prayer, you can turn things around, and you can get help from above, from whoever's available at that time that you can get to come down and help you, to help, turn things around.
So tell me a little bit about the characteristics. So in these possessions, it sounds like there's certain patterns and trends that you see with these types of possessions, which means that there's certain viability to it, in the sense the human connection. Like you said, sometimes when you just show up, it just goes away. Sometimes when you come in and you have a negative mindset or something like that, it feeds it. Also, the same thing comes with the person. The person is typically going to be a little bit weaker minded. They're going to be vulnerable in a sense. That's why they utilize younger people or people in unbalanced emotional states. But what are these characteristics that the demons attach to, but also that the demons or these negative entities kind of portray?
The person, you never get, if somebody calls you and tells you, Reverend Shawn, I need help, I'm possessed.
Yeah.
They're not possessed.
Right.
They are the last persons that know it, and if they did know it, the demon's not going to allow them to tell you that they're possessed.
Right.
So there's usually infestation, oppression going on. You always have a family member or somebody extremely close to that person that reaches out to you and says, I believe my husband, my wife, my child, my girlfriend, my neighbor who I've known all his life is possessed by a demon. And when they start describing to you why they believe that, they're telling you something. Of course, you can't judge, you don't know the person, but they're assuring you this behavior is not, this is not my family member. I'm telling you, Rev, this is not my family member. Their eye color has changed. They wear their hair different. They smell bad. They're extremely violent. They don't go to work any longer. They don't bathe any longer. It's just a bad situation. I need help. So when you get there, the demons want to hide. I have some trick phrases that I will sometimes whisper in a person's ear that I believe is possessed, that almost always gets some type of reaction that I'm looking for to let me know what I'm up against. But it's that kind of thing, and this can go on for years and years and years sometimes. By the time I'm called for help, I can walk in and see a person that looks like they just got out of years of confinement in a POW camp.
Yeah.
And I'll go, is this person ill? Well, Rev, this has been going on for a long time. We haven't been able to, he or she doesn't eat very much. No bathroom habits. It's just a really ugly situation, and we need help. If I can get the person on hallowed ground, that's the best, but that's tough to do, because if the person is still talking with you between breaks from the demon manifesting, the person is talking to you.
Yeah.
Appreciates, okay, so why are you here, Reverend Shawn? Well, your father has asked me to come in because he thinks, you've got some issues going on of a spiritual nature, something malevolent or, God forbid, demonic has attached itself to you, and you might possibly be possessed. Of course, they deny it.
Yeah.
But if I can why don't we go take a ride? That's a fine line with being a little not forthcoming with the person. I may not tell them we're going to take a ride and drive to one of my favorite churches so that we're on hallowed ground and go take a little walk, because I probably wouldn't get them in the car.
Yeah.
And so if I can get them on hallowed ground, that helps a lot. But like I said, everybody in the family has to be on board. There's strength in numbers. There's power in prayer. And so usually the person is, to their loved ones and people that have known them for a long time, they know that there's something different about this person. They're not the same anymore.
Right.
Their vessel has been invaded by an invading unclean spirit, and it's been in there for so long. Now this person begins to literally decay away.
Yeah.
The scary thing about that now, and we talk about the veil being so thin, is complete integration. I know some exorcists don't believe it's possible, but many do believe it's possible that the possession can be going on for so long that eventually that original soul of that person is pushed aside and pushed away, and the unclean spirit completely takes over. So now you've got a demon walking around.
What?
And
I
see
think
some of the ugly things that people do to
Yeah.
each other nowadays. That's demonic.
I think they call them politicians.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, I've tried to be. I especially since well, we won't go there. I've tried so hard to be so. I went through my phase. I went through my phase to allowing myself to get too involved in the politics, and there was a time where I was never into politics. And why all of a sudden in the past few years I've found myself, up to my neck in it, and people close to me too. Two things: I've lost so many friends due to who I voted for in the election before last, and I've lost a lot of friends because I became an exorcist who are just too freaked out about it. And like I said, I don't judge anybody. I pray for everybody. I don't change. I'm still approachable. My door's open to anybody that wants to come back and ask me about, my profession as an exorcist, or ask me about my political views. And like I said, I don't judge anybody. But there's something. You lived in D.C. Let's start right there.
Yeah.
That's a very demonically charged town.
So, esoterically speaking, I would consider myself a investigative symbologist, an investigative mythologist. Been studying and involved in the occult for well over 25 years. But my approach isn't the standard approach. I don't look at the books like this book right here. I don't look at the books and say, I'm going to take this literal in context. I'm going to look at the mysteries of which the book is actually talking about, and I'm going to deep dive into that. Now, Washington, D.C. is quite interesting. Now, when I was there, I actually worked with a gentleman by the name of William Henry. Been on Coast to Coast AM. He's wrote many different books. And I was sending him information pertaining to the esoteric symbology of Washington, D.C. and the breakdown of that in basically late 18th, early 19th century alchemical symbology of how it would be interpreted. And so what you find is that the symbology of Washington, D.C. was never meant to be evil in context. And what I uncovered is, I was just talking about this in the last show, is between 1500 to 1600, you had a overtaking by whoever this evil regime is, these evil beings that have been on this planet for a long time, the Watchers, whoever they might be. They started infiltrating various aspects of society. They started with the high caste societies of the occultism. Then they moved to secret societies. When they moved into secret societies, they started taking over symbology or symbolism. Now, symbolism is very interesting because a symbol is kind of like, I call it a quantum representation of intentional energy, where if I, like what you said, if I give a demon attention, that demon gains energy. Well, a symbol is the same thing. This is why you have the cross of Jesus and all these other things. They have this certain energy that is contained within them that represents the form of whatever is represented by, right? And so they've hijacked this whole world of symbology through the secret societies, and this is where we get the symbolic evil derivation in Washington, D.C. And you're right, it is absolutely is a charged symbolic place, but that charged symbolic place can mean many different things. Now, I'll give you one of the examples of this. Washington, D.C. is a 10 square mile square between Virginia and Maryland, right? And so if you look at it from north to south, it's actually a square that's on its side, so it's a diamond, okay? It's known as the District of Columbia. Columbia is actually representative of the column, the white dove. Jesus was known as the white dove. Jesus was the perfect creation, God's creation, the reincarnation of God, right? We go back to the whole reincarnation story. Now, the diamond is the perfect substance, right? The hardened substance, the object of perfection. So you have the diamond that exists, that's representative of the dove resurrection, reincarnation, so forth, that exists between the two states, Maryland and Virginia. Now, take off the LAND off of Maryland and take the IA off of Virginia. You got Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary, in the womb of Virgin Mary, is the sacred diamond of the dove that is being resurrected in Washington, D.C. And so this symbology is real and it's legitimately there. Now, people will talk about the upside down pentagrams. The interesting thing is Freemasonry always talks about true direction. So true direction, magnetic south or magnetic north is actually the South Pole. So the South Pole is magnetic north. So when we're looking at true direction, the Masons would have known this, and they actually built the actual pentagram facing true north, which would have been magnetic north, which is south. And then you can get into the obelisk and everything like this, the Osirian mysteries, and how all this fits together into it. And what it is just this story of rebirth and resurrection of these great societies that they were trying to rebuild again with the United States of America. But the symbology was definitely hijacked. One of the most notable is the cult of Minerva, or Minerva. This is the Roman goddess, also known as Athena. Athena was represented by the owl. As you know, the owl lies in darkness and is usually represented by its eye or its eyes. And so Athena didn't believe that humanity should be privy to the wisdom that she held. So she hid from the eye the wisdom in the owl, and sent the owl into the darkness. And this is where the Romans picked it up, and you had the goddess Minerva. Minerva is the goddess of the owl that holds the wisdom in the darkness. Now, when you shine the light onto it, it casts a shadow with long horns, and this is Baal, Baal. This is that very, very ancient demonic god, Moloch, Baal, so forth. And this is ignorance being portrayed onto humanity from the derivation away from knowledge and the occulting of knowledge. Now, what's interesting is the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. sits on the symbol of an owl. And at the heart of the Capitol building is actually at the heart of the owl. And so they use these as temples of sacrificial worship. Now, people are like, what do you mean sacrificial worship? Well, Congress goes out there and makes policy every day that affects the lives of human beings here in America, including the deprivation of freedoms, liberties, as well as the death of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and of Americans through the policies that they implement. And they do that in the heart of the Owl of Minerva, right there in the temple in the middle of Washington, D.C., which is now completely a satanic temple.
It's just all so overwhelmingly frightening on so many levels that it's just my mind inside has blown up a little bit over just listening to you go through that. Earlier today I was on a show and one of the callers called in, and I don't know if she was referring to me or if the way I said it, I said it that way, and I didn't mean it to say it that way, but we got on the topic of witchcraft.
Yeah.
And I think I was giving examples of what I find most common in these cases where the demonic are present is somebody has either Satanist or a devil worshiper, or they've been practicing the black arts. They're a witch, and they start practicing witchcraft, but perverting it and doing things with that religious belief system that aren't good.
Yep.
And it can happen in any religion. You can take that religious belief system and pervert it, and then do something bad with it. So that's the only example I was trying to make. And her comment was, when you say witchcraft, why do you make it sound like it's so bad?
Yeah.
And that was, if she meant me when I said it, that I was making it sound bad, I didn't mean it for it to come across that way.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And I have, if anybody has watched my podcast on Fridays or my radio show on Monday, or has known me for any extended length of time, everybody that knows me and loves me knows I don't judge, and I have many friends
Yeah.
who are pagan, who are witches, but they are so they're blessed, they're all full of love and light. They're almost like a lot of my indigenous friends that I have, the indigenous holy people that I know, their approach to their love and light and their religious belief system, that I was just making a point that more times than not, it's like I reached for this book when you started talking about symbols. Reverend Lawrence Gacy, who's no longer with us.
Yeah.
But I bring this book with me on cases because there's a chapter or two on all kinds of symbols, and I take it with me because I want to be able to, many times I find somebody in the home practicing the dark arts, and I usually identify it by symbols that are hidden, like behind the clothes rack, in the closet, on the wall, inside drawers, under the underwear, in the garage behind some crates on the wall. So it's just a quick reference book for me to go to and look at these, see if I am seeing the same symbol and what it means. Because nobody ever wants to tell you when you go to these homes, yeah, my son, my daughter, or yeah, for many years I practiced witchcraft, and I don't think that's why we're having these issues, but I want to be honest with you, Rev. And that's when you have to tell them, well, most definitely you probably were the cause of what's happening now. Good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe you meant well. Maybe you thought it was cool. Maybe you were a fan of Bewitched and thought it would be cool to be, a witch and cast spells, but you brought something down on you, and now we've got to deal with it. So, all of that stuff you said to me, who uses that knowledge? Like, I'm the first one to always tell people, I got my bachelor's degree, and the training I took was to become an ordained exorcist in Christian spiritual warfare ministries. I didn't go down the path of theology. That's not my gig. There's one thing that I'm trained to do, and that's what I do. I'm the first to admit that I can become easily sidetracked if I go down too many rabbit holes. Like what you said to me was so interesting. I could see me getting so into that and studying that, especially since I've had my fair share of being really involved in politics the last few years. Who takes this knowledge? Who is perverting that knowledge for gain?
Ooh, there it is. So to understand that, though, we have to take it to the next level. Why does the demon possess the subject? Why does Satan try to dictate his rule? For power, for control. They know that they can subvert the will of somebody, especially the weak and the vulnerable, and so they do it because they want to come and manifest back into this world. They want to have power, domain, or control over an individual. It's the ultimate derivation of power, is control over an individual through subversion or through ignorance. And going back to the whole Athenian aspect of it, is it was originally meant, and this is kind of how occultism arose, right? Occultism just means hidden from the eye. That humanity was not ready for the knowledge and information, so they put it to the side and took it out of the context of society so humanity wouldn't hurt themselves. Now, you talked about this. A lot of these witches and these people that get involved in this stuff, they have no clue what the heck they're doing. They're messing with powers well beyond their knowledge base, and this is why they get into the trouble, and this is why evil comes about, because evil is waiting for that moment to come in, subvert, and find that vulnerable person and take away their freedoms, their wills, so forth, right? So the question is why would somebody do this? And we can get into that because why is for power and control over humanity. It's to keep humanity in a state of ignorance. This is what I call the slave matrix. The slave matrix is a state of ignorance in which humanity is in. This can be a traumatic state. This could be from years and years and years of psychological warfare that's been perpetuated on people through the media, through the poisoning of our air, our water, our foods, the control of propaganda, all these different things. That's psychological warfare, and that does produce emotional imbalance as well as trauma onto people, and that weakens us spiritually. This is why things like what you do and things like what we do is so critically important, because it rebalances those powers that get off balance by the way society's been set up. And this is why I say that we've been hijacked as society. Now, Madame Blavatsky, do you know who Madame Blavatsky was?
I do not know.
Okay, the Theosophist Society came about in the mid 1800s, and she brought a lot of conglomeration to the whole metaphysical community. She went and grabbed Hindu metaphysics. She went out and got Christian theologists and brought them all together and started looking at the parallels of knowledge and started putting it together. This created what we know of today as a New Age movement. Well, one of the people that came out of the New Age movement, this came around the late 1800s, was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This is Hermeticism in a nutshell, but was hijacked by these high priestess of what now would be known as the Church of Satan. Alice Bailey is one of the first ones. She went out and created something known as the Lucius Trust, or the Lucifer Trust. Now, in ancient occultism, when you get back into it, Lucifer is not an entity, it's not a being, it's a concept. It's a concept that light is deceptive. All light is deceptive. This is why he's the light bringer. He's the bearer of the light. He's the false light of deception. In the sense that we look at it, it's physiological. Is light reflects and refracts off of everything in front of us. When it does, it hits the rods and the cones of our eyes, stimulates a bioelectrical signal, goes down our optic nerve, and goes into our cerebral cortex. Our cerebral cortex has never experienced light in its life. It doesn't know what light is. But instead, it produces everything that you see as light. So your whole experience of light comes from a place in your brain that's never experienced light. That's ultimate deception. That deception is based upon your belief structure, what you believe, what you think, what you know, what you're indoctrinated into, and so forth. This is the concept, the ancient concept of Lucifer. And so the Lucifer Trust, basically what they did is they went and started hijacking all these philosophies and these symbols. Now, symbols have real energetic properties. And when you hijack them, the Nazis, for example, they hijacked the sacred swastika symbol, which meant unity, right? Universal power of unity. They inverted it, and they utilize it to perpetuate evil upon the world, okay? Yeah. And this is what they do, is they invert these symbols and convert that energy that it holds into the energy that they're trying to portray. We just talked about this in the last show.
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
Jump in.
Why do you believe they were so, for lack of a better term, hell-bent on capturing and gathering so many religious relics, Christianity, Catholicism, religious relics?
So it holds power. Think about, I always ask a physicist or a scientist I have on the show, because one thing that I've done is I've taken occultism and I try to match it with science. I try to derive it from a science. And one thing that I come to realize is that there's only one thing that ever happens in the universe. If we break it down on the quantum scale all the way up to the macro scale of planets interacting or atoms interacting, the only thing that ever happens is energy exchanges. Two systems come together and they exchange energy. And this is how God operates through us. This is what God is. God is energy. God is the totality, the absolutism, the love of the universe, the creator of the universe, the brain of the universe. It's all of that stuff, right? And so energy is what's really happening. Now, physical things hold energy. They're architecture of energy. They're constructs of energy. Whether they're organized, natural, or unorganized, out of chaos, unnatural. This would be unorganized chaos, right? So order out of chaos. Makes sense, right? That's kind of like that philosophy from occultism, order out of chaos. And this is unorganized matter that holds energy, and that energy is utilized to do something, to bring about a result or a consequence. Now, they would go about and grab all these relics because those relics hold real, actual energy, significance. And you can subvert that energy to your own will, just like what they did with the swastika.
Oh, I got you. They're going to use that energy. They're going to pervert it.
That's right. 100%. And they already are.
You know what? What would be great? Is you're in Canada, correct?
I'm in Denver. No, I'm in Denver.
Denver.
Yeah.
Where did I think you were in Canada?
That would be my assistant who scheduled you. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she is. Here's my question for you. This is where I like to keep things simple, because if I go into a place where I know somebody in the home has brought this wrath upon them because they've dabbled in things they should have dabbled into, rather than get into a conversation like I'm having with you, that's where I find myself being distracted, and I believe that's a ploy.
Yeah.
I have to nip it right in the bud and say, it is what it is. Now let's just fix it.
That's it.
Are you in agreement that, you were probably the cause? You've given this thing permission, or make it think it has permission to be here. Now we've got to move on off that and now fight.
Yep.
Why? And I'm going to ask you because you were there.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to get into the brain of some of these people as to why they even went down that road in the first place in their life. Not that it matters, not that I need to have that knowledge and nip that in the bud, but what I'm finding is more and more people aren't continuing to dot their I's, cross their T's, keep all their portals shut, and continue to walk down the straight path rather than the left one, the crooked one, and they go back to their old ways. And when they reopen these portals, I would have to say almost, not always, but virtually almost impossible for me to go in and now fix that mess, because these things come back with a lot of help, and they're even more, this is just putting it mildly, even more pissed off than they were the first time, which the scale of the hatred that they have for us, I couldn't adequately put into words. It's it is just something that once you're up close and personal with it, you never forget it, and that's what distinguishes the difference between. I mean, I can nail it right off the bat on a case that's what I'm dealing with, as opposed to just a spirit. So, what could I do to nip that in the bud so these people don't go back to their old ways, which brought this stuff down on them?
So you started with asking is what brings people back down that route, and it comes about with curiosity, with questionability of faith. I think that's a big one. Is this stuff really real? Well, maybe if I go down this route and I see that this actually happens, that means that this is actually real. Well, oh no, now it's real, right? So, people question reality a lot. People have this curiosity about reality. For me, it was about these questions that were arising within myself that I have no idea where they came from, but I had knowledge that was arising that I didn't know where it came from. And I didn't really understand it, but I wanted to. And the path it led me to was this information. Now, I love how this ties in, because when we start talking about this, think about this as a human being. Although we can look at ourselves as infinite beings, our soul is this infinite creation of God. Here in the physical, mortal structure that we are in, we're very finite. Right? We're very finite. That means that I can only give my attention to a few things at a time.
Absolutely.
Right? Think about attention as an actual physical connection to things. Right? Think about it as a rope that you throw around things. So I only have like 100 ropes that I can throw my attention around. Right? And every time that I throw that rope around that something, I have an energy exchange between me and it, where it's actually exchanging energy with me in it. And this energy exchange can be parasitic. It can be beneficial, right? Or it could be I draw their energy out of them, right? We know people like this, human vampires, so forth, right? And this is actually what's happening, is we're connecting with them energetically, whether they're in the spirit world or in the physical world, or whether it's an object, whether it's a game, a computer, a phone. We give our attention to these things and we latch that attention onto them. Well, guess what? Most of the time we forget to disconnect. And so we have all these old relationships in our life that are still connected to all these old entities, these old beings, these old things that we never truly disconnect from and spiritually disconnect from. This is really what I mean. Energetically is spiritually, when we spiritually disconnect from them. And if we don't do that, those things can siphon energy away from us and drag us back to them. This is drug addiction. This is everything else. And so one of the things that we need to learn to do as spiritual beings is learn how to sever those ties. There's actually a practice in ancient occultism and magic. And what this is it's writing the spell. So literally what you do is you talk about the relationship that you have with whatever it is. You write it down on paper. And you state what that relationship is and that the relationship has ended and the relationship is over. And then you return it back to the elements and you burn it in fire. And that relinquishes that connection, severs that connection.
Very interesting. It reminds me of how many times I've taken a blessed candle and taken something like a nail and wrote on the candle what I wanted to accomplish from the lighting of this candle, the messages, or even if it's on a piece of paper and you fold it and you put it under the candle and you let the candle burn from start to finish. Intention. You're putting that intention out, severing the ties. You would think these people would have learned. You brought this down on you, and now you've witnessed the power. And I believe some of the most violent demonic possessions I've been witness to, I believe God allowed to happen because somebody close to that person needed, and it might have even been that person.
Faith. Somebody
needed to witness the power of God over the power of whatever this was that was trying to take this person's lifeline away from them. And it's just heartbreaking. I may lose contact with them for 6 months, a year, a couple of years, and then somebody close to them or even them themselves will reach back out to me and say, I'm almost so embarrassed to be reaching back out to you again. Since I last saw you, I got back in with the same old crowd. And what I mean by that is they're not in a coven.
Yeah.
Same old crowd was the one guys that were hanging out on the other side of the veil that they opened up the curtain and allowed to come into their life. And they came back like gangbusters. And now it's just... you already witnessed what they can do. You already witnessed the power of God deliver you out of that situation. Why?
It's this thing right here.
That's a mystery to me. Yeah.
It is some people, they believe they are victims. They want to be the victim, right? They give their will to these things, whether unknowingly or knowingly. You mentioned a great word there, intention. And I always explain how intention and attention are directly related to each other. Attention is outwardly attention, right? So I always look at it as I have a lasso. I take the lasso, I throw it around an object, and I pull that lasso tight. The object doesn't move, but the lasso, the rope, gets tighter and tighter. There becomes a tension on the line between me and the object. A stress. A tension is a tension between me and the object. It's a stress between me and the object physically. Well, I take that same object and I hold it within my mind's eye. And I take that imaginary rope in my mind and I throw it on that same object and I draw that rope tight and I get an intention, a tension inward, right? And the interesting thing is when it's in my imagination, I can now attach emotion to it and an end state. What I want to happen with that object, where I want it to go, what I want it to do for me or benefit me in a certain way, as well as the emotional state that I want to feel at the end state of where it's going. And so this magical process happens where that intention is translated through attention. And it's like this psychic connection that we all have, is that energy that we actually connect with each other with is transferring that intentional imaginary energy in our mind through that line of attention to everything that's external to us that we have connections with. So if we have a connection to something demonic, evil, witchcraft, or something that we don't know about, okay, that thing can have a power over us and can really reach our imagination, can reach our level of intention. It can control our thoughts to a certain degree, or at least influence in them if we don't have power and control over our own mind. Reverend, I'll tell you, in occultism, or we have something known as natural law. Natural law is something that cannot be devoided. It exists there for everybody. This is where like karma comes in. If you go against natural law, you have bad karma. If you go with natural law, you have good karma. The law of cause and effect, which is pretty well known out there. Newton talked about this. Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The law of causation, though, is you have to look at these as two realms of existence that we exist in. The realm of causation, right, is the magician's realm. The realm of effect is the ones who are getting the tricks played on them. And the way to look at this is causation is basically this, is I have a mental process that comes about and produces thoughts, ideas, constructs. These thoughts, ideas, constructs go out there and they influence action. I do the action. My action influences my physical reality. The reality reacts and gives me a result. That's magic. That's magic 101. Well, then you have the land of effect. Well, the land of effect means that someone else is producing that causation and I react to it. The best way to explain this is if anybody out there receives a paycheck is nothing more than a bribe to forget about your dreams and work for somebody else's, right?
Yeah.
That's the realm of effect, is that you're working for someone else's actions for someone else's benefit. That's the land of ignorance. And so when we start seeing how people can influence us, they influence us with information, psychological warfare. They influence us with information, and then we react to that information, and our interactions with reality, when we react to it, benefit them. That's dark magic. And so it's this light magic and dark magic aspect that go hand in hand. Now, a demon someone in the spiritual world, they can attack that process and cause you to react to their influence. When you react to their influence, you are benefiting them. And when you benefit them, they have a power and control over you. And that is intoxicating to them as well as to you sometimes, as to the people out there who allow this to happen to them.
I still think some of the greatest stories and people that I have met are people that have really gone down that dark path and been there for a long time and did a lot of things that they regret. And if they had a chance to make amends for it and do it over again, they would. And they come back. Some of them were one-time devout Catholics and have gone down. I believe people like myself, I firmly believe there's a wanted poster of me hanging up in hell. And I believe that people like me are most vulnerable and under attack all the time. We can never let our guard down. Nope. But I've seen some one-time devout Catholics even go down that dark road and really for a long period of time do quite well in that dark realm. And then it goes bad.
Yep.
And my biggest success stories are the people that have come back from that have gone down that road, was there for a while, thought, why didn't I do this earlier? This was the answers I was looking for all along. This is for me. And then realized one day, no, made a big mistake, and were able to pull themselves out of that. Those are great success stories. All the knowledge that you have about all that stuff would you haven't heard the last from me. I may run into some cases. I'm even thinking of some cases that I've ran into where I could have bounced some things off you and said, what do you think I should say to this person? Especially people that have come back. But having all that knowledge, do you mind me asking, do you have a religious belief system in place? Were you raised in any particular, your parents?
I was raised Presbyterian.
Okay.
Raised Presbyterian, and now I would consider, and this is kind of awkward because they have been at war for centuries, Gnosticism and Hermeticism. I'm a cross between a Gnostic and a Hermetic, where I understand Jesus, I believe in Jesus 100%, but there's more to the whole philosophy, the story, and everything else. Religion I look at as more as the old Latin root religare, to mend back together that which was broken, that which was separated. And if that's the case, then why do they separate it down into denominations again, right? If we're going to bring everything back together, why we separate it into denominations? And that always confused me a little bit. But yeah, I believe in an absolute creator God. I think that God is, from my experience, from my understanding, and people, this is a hard one to explain, your interpretation of God, right? I think that we all have a relationship with God. And I think that it's an individualized relationship, and it's something that it's very hard and difficult to explain to somebody else. I always explain it like this, is that I can't know Reverend Shawn. I can't be inside your mind. I can't see your thoughts. All I can do is when you say something, it reflects off of something that I know about myself. I can only know you as well as I know myself, right? Which means that my relationship with God is much the same. I can only know God as well as I know myself. And I'm not learning about myself. I can't know God any more than that. Right. As well as God is this infinite, eternal power existent within the universe, but predominantly it's impartial to its creation, which means that God isn't going to move this cup to benefit me, but God will work through me to move that cup. That God works it through us as conduits to benefit creation. Not that God moves mountains to benefit his creation. As in, God is impartial, and he has set aside laws and principles, which I call natural law, which all laws of man, all laws of the Ten Commandments, so forth, derive from natural law, that these natural laws basically organize how it all flows together. Now, magic is simply just the understanding of natural law and how to utilize natural law to benefit all of humanity, yourself, other people. Subverting that natural law for your own benefit while putting me in ignorance is black magic, right? But my interpretation of God is it's the ultimate creator. I call it absolutism or totalitism, right? There's nothing outside of it. It exists within everything. It is everything. I am not it, but it is inherent within me. And I can never know it. I can never understand it. It's beyond my conception, right? And that I seek to know it. That's what my life's about, is I seek to know more and more about it. And the more I do, I'll tell you, as I get filled with so much more gratitude and love than ever before. And that's how I know it's the true path, is because the more I seek to know it, the more I'm filled with love and gratitude.
Well, it was interesting, two things you said. One thing just recently and something earlier in the show that I latched right onto. At the beginning of this last statement,
yeah,
you basically described an exorcist. And going further back, you talked about God reincarnating in the womb of Mary.
Right, in Washington, D.C.
And I never really looked at it that way. I just always have thought of it as, God, sent his only begotten son down in the form of man through the Virgin Mary. But reincarnation was an interesting word. I had never heard anybody talk about God being reincarnated before. And I'm thinking of two things. I'm thinking of the people that study deity yoga, because everybody in my field says that yoga is bad.
Right.
And then I see all these people that are some of the most wonderful people I know on the face of the planet that are great yoga artists and practitioners. But I believe it's Buddhism that practice deity possession yoga. And I've had some of that go wrong with some of these people. And I believe, I could be wrong, it may not be Buddhism, but I know it's a deity possession. During their performance of this yoga, they invite the possession of certain spirits to come through and do whatever, give them guidance, When you say the reincarnation of God, it at first made me think, well, if God was reincarnating as Jesus in the Virgin Mary, what was he before that to be reincarnated?
Well, in occultism or in metaphysics or in history, right? We can look back. We can see Krishna, we can see Vishnu, we can see Tammuz, we can see Dionysus, we can see Horus, we can see many derivations of that reincarnated aspect of God throughout all of mythology. And this is known as the Trinity or the resurrection story. The one that's probably most close to popular society is that of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Now, Osiris was the king of the universe. Isis was his sister as well as his wife. His brother Set, along with his 72 disciples, tricked Osiris into getting into the coffin. Who can fit into the coffin? The coffin is only made for Osiris. Osiris lays into the coffin, and they chop it up into 13 pieces, and they throw it into the Nile River. And so he's dead, and his brother Set, who is the god of the underworld, who was very jealous of his rule over the outer world, threw him into the Nile River. His sister, wife, felt so bad. She went about, gathered all the pieces, could only find 12, and there's the remnants of the number 12 again, very prominent there. And she only finds 12. She couldn't find his penis. So she melds him a penis of gold. Well, she's a goddess of wisdom, of knowledge, of resurrection, and it's said that behind the veil of her eyes is contained the secrets of the universe. So she resurrects her husband for one night and one night only. She becomes impregnated that night by the golden penis, okay? And that impregnation is his resurrection. His spirit transfers from that golden spirit into her womb, and she's called Immaculate Concepted. 9 months later, she gives birth to the reincarnated Horus, or the sun god in ancient Egypt. And this is, we were talking about Amun-Ra earlier. Amun-Ra is the son, the grandson, great-grandson of Ra. And so Ra comes out born, and this is the resurrected Osiris. Now, the obelisk, the Egyptian obelisk, the long phallic symbol, this is what it represents. It represents resurrection. It represents the resurrection. And if you ever notice that the obelisks are on the ground and they always point into the sky, and it's as if the male phallus is penetrating the sky, right? To resurrect that whole domain of God, bringing the kingdom of God back down to heaven. Now, there's an astrotheological context to this story, as well as a literal and an analogical. Now, the astrotheological context is Isis is the moon, Osiris is the tapestry of the stars in the sky, and Horus is the actual literal sun. And it talks about the translation. Now, Set was the process of the sun going down over the horizon every evening, and he's carried down by his 72 companions, which are the other stars and constellations in the sky. When he's murdered, he only finds 12 pieces to him. The 12 pieces of the 12 constellations in the sky, right? Now, it's interesting that the sun is reflecting or refracting off of the moon, and the moon blinds you from seeing the whole tapestry of the sky. Well, this is why Isis had the veil over her eyes. The veil was a veil of light, of which you couldn't see the whole tapestry of the sky to learn the secrets beyond the veil. And so there's this whole different context of these resurrection stories and what the resurrection stories actually mean. So there's many different versions of it, and this is why in Washington, D.C., we have this same scenario being set up, in the sense where the United States of America was supposed to be this rebirth of the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire, of all these strong empires throughout history. And this is why we see the symbology. If you go to the Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., I think it's the Museum of Natural History, and you walk out, I was down there and I'm doing some investigative symbology, right? And I'm looking at the statue, and the statue is this woman holding a baby. Well, she's holding the baby on her left side. And I hear this old couple walk by. Oh, look, honey, it's Mary and Jesus. I said, oh, that's not Mary and Jesus. That's Semiramis and Tammuz. And they're like, who? I'm like, well, it's Ishtar. It's the Babylonian whore. It's the Babylonian goddess. And you can tell this because she has 7 stars around her crown. And she always holds Tammuz on the left shoulder, where Mary's going to typically hold the baby, Jesus, on her right shoulder. And so symbolically, you can see this, and she's like, oh my God, I never knew that. Like, who knows this stuff? I'm like, well, it's kind of like my passion in life is just learning the mysteries, right? Like learning what all this stuff means. Yeah. But here's the interesting thing is the Babylonian god, right? Ishtar, Semiramis, this is Esther in the Bible. This is also Isis, Venus, Athena. All these goddesses are all interrelated to this whole resurrection story as the predominant mother goddess or mama. And if you go back to Sumerian times, you have Inanna or Moma. Moma is actually a Sumerian word where we derive the word mommy, mama. And this is the sacred mother that came down and mated with Anu from the sky and produced humanity through her DNA or through her will, right? And so we can trace these multiple different stories in the context of the historical context of where these stories come from, the historical account. I don't know. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of the timeline, right? Because we know that about 1700 years ago, the timeline really gets shattered when, don't take this the wrong way, Christians, when Christianity goes on crusades around the world and religions rise up against each other and start destroying information. We had the burning of the Library of Alexandria prior to this. Then we have the Crusades. We have the Templars. And we have all this destruction of knowledge. The Catholic Church destruction of all the paganistic knowledge. The Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. Removing all the ancient books, the Apocrypha, all these things from it, and only utilizing the canonized versions. All this stuff really shattered the timeline of history in our understanding of when these mysteries all took place. And I honestly believe that they're all just one story. They're all the same story. The same thing with Jesus and Mary. It's all one story. It's the true story of what happened, but it's all related in different contexts throughout history over and over and over in different analogies.
Yeah. And
symbolically, it means all the same thing. And I think that the Jesus or God Jesus, however you want to perceive it, is the representation of God working through man. It's God's divine will.
You're led to believe that time when Gabriel came and told Mary that, God is going to impregnate you. You're led to believe that we were in such bad shape that he needed to do that in order to save humanity, send his son down here. So whether all those stories prior to that were real or not, whatever the stories were, things were bad, and you could buy into all of that being part of all the bad stuff that he needed to take care of, and that's how he chose to take care of it. And these fallen angels that I run into have so much hatred for him because he chose to come down in the form of a man. And does all of that knowledge ever work against you? Do you ever, it's like the reason why I don't study demonology.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like they always say, knowledge is power, but sometimes, you're like, wow, I wish I didn't see that. I wish I didn't know that. Type of certain things. Do you ever get that feeling?
I'll tell you a story. So I like I told you, I've known this stuff for a very long time. I've studied this stuff for a very long time. I got out of it after I had some incidences happen. And I really.
Why do you think? Let me stop you there. Yeah. Why do you think you had the incidents?
To show me. I think it was God showing me what I was really dealing with here. That this stuff was as real as, because I always carry a level of skepticism. I always do. You have to. If you don't have skepticism, you're never going to question what is happening. And if you don't question what's happening, you don't know if you're being manipulated or not, right? And so I always carry a level of skepticism. And God showed me that this stuff is as real as day, that the spirit world absolutely is there, that there is this balance between good and evil in the universe, and that many of us are here to actually for a specific reason. And I think a lot of my understanding of what was happening to me was like my coming into being. I missed out a lot of that in my teenage years. I didn't have this coming into being. I didn't have a structured family life that taught me these things and the moral and ethical principles in life. I learned a lot of that in the military and then through books. And I learned it by drug use, drug abuse. And I learned all this stuff secondarily. So when I started getting into the understanding of magic, this whole world of esotericism and occult, what is it, right? I think it was God's way of showing me the true power that exists in the universe, as well as my connection to it and how dangerous it can be, as well as how beneficial it can be.
Let's say you didn't have the incidents happen to you when they did that woke you up and said, you went like, whoa. Have you ever thought about where you would be today? Had you
That's
not
a good one.
Had those original experiences?
Oh man, I'd be an a-hole. Oh, I would not like myself, because I can tell you, before I really dedicated my life to this level of knowledge.
Brother, you spoke for me. I didn't, there's been many years in my life where I didn't even like looking at myself in the
I'd be
mirror.
unsatisfied. I'd be hateful.
And it's so different now that,
Yep.
yeah.
It's like God led us on a path.
All I
and
do
showed
know
us
is
something.
one thing. All I do know is one thing. Is like, I do know that whatever I've ran into, maybe I haven't come across the mother lode of all haunts yet, but I do know what I have ran into so far, that the power of Jesus Christ is just.
It's true. It's real.
It's like I had, a one time a demon manifesting through a client told me it got into my head somehow, and I just was like, forgot who I was, where I was at, what I was doing. So I always have everything written down. I can reach into my pocket if I have to and just pull out a prayer and start praying. Get to the bare basics. If that's what I have to do, that's what I'll do. And one time I remember praying the rosary, and there's a lot of Hail Marys on there. And that's when things got really bad for the demon, because he said that every time I said the Hail Mary, it was like hitting him over the head with a sledgehammer. And he just couldn't listen to it any longer. And I heard what sounded like a gunshot, and everything got quiet, and it was gone. So I just have to believe, it's my faith is important to me, regardless of all of this stuff you laid on me. I have to keep it simple. I have to believe that the God, and I don't know who God is. You and I are going to be having this same conversation. We'll probably be co-hosting an afterlife show in heaven one day, and we'll have a good laugh over the things we'll know then that we don't know now. But whoever this God is, supposedly the father of Jesus, who I believe in, has to be the one that is over all of these other ones. And if all these demons, I mean, we all know all this happened before our creation. So were all of these other gods just extremely high-ranking demons that they fell? And of course, there are going to be different levels of them, and we know there's different levels of them. We know there's the little ones and the armies and the captains and all that. But were all of these other gods that weren't so good just extremely high-ranking demonic powers? Because it just seems when the going gets tough and I'm able to really pull down help from above to help me in these situations, that God and Jesus really, and the Virgin Mary really hold a lot of power over these things that I'm confronting.
Yep. And absolutely they should, because think about it in the sense of the belief. When you align your belief with the true origin or the true source or the true understanding, that's a powerful thing. And now if everybody does that, now if there's 1 billion or 2 billion people that are aligning their belief structure with the true source, that becomes incredibly powerful, especially for the symbols, especially for the words that are spoken that derive from that power, the representation of that power and source. And this is why it's incredibly powerful. This is why you're here, and this is why you do what you do. You're absolutely right that God put you here for a specific reason, for a reason. And it's this knowledge, it's this understanding that you have of these astral realms, of these demonic realms, and how to get rid of them, that is going to be needed here very shortly in the future. Because guess what? There are things happening right now. The balance between good and evil is leaking out into the world scene. We're seeing it. Like I was joking about the politicians, but I really wasn't. I mean, this is really.
You weren't not at all. I didn't want to go. We could easily go down that route, but like I said, I've sat down and had conversations with friends that I've known all my life that had what they refer to as this, if it's a real thing, Trump derangement syndrome
Mm-hmm.
so bad that I didn't even recognize them as the people that I once knew
Yep.
as good friends. And they were so insultive and attacking and vicious to me for the simple fact. And I'm all about love. And I don't judge anybody for their belief system or who
Yep.
you voted for or who you didn't vote for. But I didn't even recognize them, and the attacks I was getting for that. I get attacked all the time for being an exorcist and being a baptized Catholic and a Christian exorcist, but it's usually from other people that have absolutely no religious belief system whatsoever, and I know that there's an attachment there, and that's what's. And I pray for them when I get attacked. I pray for that person because I know that they aren't attacking me from a knowledge standpoint. They're reacting to just maybe seeing the collar. Like I had a young girl that saw me walking down the street, a young girl, didn't know me from Adam, and she was giving me a weird look as we were walking towards one each other. And when she got to I forget what side she was on actually, she turned her head, yelled at me so loud in the side of my ear was ringing for a while. Jesus wasn't real. She saw the crucifix too. And then just kept walking like nothing had happened. And what would possess a person to do that? I felt really, really, I felt sick to my stomach for that person. And I just stood there. I stopped for a moment and said a prayer for them. But you wonder, these people that are, we could go down, people would attack me for both not only doing what I do, but the political views.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm just, trying to get through life and do what I do, and it's okay to disagree. We can agree to disagree, and I believe in listening to both sides, and I believe in having healthy
discourse,
debate and conversation. But these people that I've known all my life, some of them were so on the vicious attack. I didn't even recognize them as the people I had once known all my life. And most of the people that have still keep in contact, and I know they love me and they check in with me once in a while, but I understand why they kind of got away from me for a while, because they're just scared. They know that whether they believe in it or not, they know that something happened to me that changed me from the Shawn that they once knew to Reverend Shawn Wittington. And something so powerful had to have changed the person that I was into the person that I am now, to be doing what I'm doing now, that it freaks them out a little bit. Rightfully so. If you're not ready to grab a hold of the bull by the horns, be careful what you wish for, and don't mess with the bull if you don't want to get the horns, because you're gonna get the horns, and then what are you gonna do then?
Yep.
And I feel sorry. We're all Americans. We're all human beings.
Yep.
And I can be really sad about the state of affairs right now, and watching how some of these people are handling themselves in the positions of power that they hold. But I have to believe in my heart of hearts, something's behind that they don't even realize is behind that, and hopefully that they they'll have salvation. Something will happen, and they will have salvation, because I do believe that all of that is getting near its end of its run, but it's going to get ugly, man. It's going to get really ugly as we get to the midterms, and 24 is going to be really, really, the gloves will be off, and there will be some ugly, dirty, nasty things going on, not only in our realm on this side of the veil, but really on the other side of the veil will be there'll be some stuff going on, and you better, you hear the old saying, you better get good with God, whoever it is you pray to,
you better know
for guidance and to help you be a good person. You better start tapping into that right now, because There's going to be a lot of casualties.
I 100% agree with you. This is a lot what we talk about. We do a political show Monday through Thursday, and we talk about a lot of this, and that a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of the people that you're describing here, this is psychological warfare. One of the reasons that I have redpills.tv or the Red Pill Project, I was telling you, I've been censored massively, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, just deleted overnight, completely demonetized. They tried to shut me down many times. But what it comes down to is the Red Pill Project is, don't believe anything anybody tells you, no matter who they are, what authority they proclaim, whether it's Trump, your priest, your pastor, whether it's this book or that book, unless you can prove it with your own volition, your own convictions, your own belief and understanding of it. Is investigate and research everything that people are telling you. Don't accept it. I have a problem with accepting things blindly. And I don't think that's what faith means. But I have a problem with accepting things blindly, without investigation, without an internal investigation into it. And that when we talk about the law of cause and effect, causation and effect, those people that live in the realm of effect, they're reacting to the world outside of them. That means that when information comes into their senses, they react to that information without hypercritically analyzing it. Now, these people that you're talking about, that Jesus isn't real, and they hate you, and they have so much hatred inside of themselves, right? That's a void in their system that's filled with darkness that's speaking out, because they are victims of trauma and psychological warfare. They have no idea that they're even sick. That's the problem, is they've spent so much of their life reacting to all the information that's been weaponized against them, that they believe that that world is more real than the real world. Well, that's the magician's trick. That's the dark magician. That's the right hand and the left hand deceiving you. That's exactly what's happening to those people.
I believe much of the cancel culture and wokeness stems from that very dark belief system. It's like, some of these statues. My gosh. Yeah. Okay, fine, but we have to know. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from, and we all know that America has a lot of ugly history to America. But it's like, I would love to have all these statues they're taking down. I'd love to have them in my front yard.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, man, you just took that Thomas Jefferson one down. I hope there's some dude out there that's like grabbing all these statues and like, come on over here, man, check it out.
Like, who okays that sort of stuff? You would figure somebody would finally go, no, I'm not taking it down. I own the museum. You're not taking down Teddy Roosevelt.
So we talk about this a lot in the sense that the way Satanism works is they try to put people in a state of ignorance that's beneficial to themselves. That's kind of like the definition of dark magic. But the way that you do that is the country is held up by the state is held up by the community, and the community is held up by the family. And if you can get in and diminish the moral and ethical foundation of that family, take the father out of the family, take God out of the family, and take the child and put him in the indoctrination centers, guess what? You just completely demoralize and de-ethicalize that whole family. And that's secondarily now what they're doing with this whole cancel culture, is they're dehumanizing society. They're taking our humanity, our culture away from those things, these symbolic things that we attach to that bring us our meaning, our understanding of life and culture. They're destroying all of that, because that's what Satanism is. It's an inversion of life, right? Evil, the word evil, E-V-I-L. It's live. It's the inversion of the word live. Live in evil. Devil is just the evil, right? The devil, right? And so demon is disembodied spirit. These disembodied spirits that embody this inversion of life, that attack everything that's good, everything that's pure, everything that's love. And see, this is what has succumbed in our planet right now. We are under a massive spiritual attack by these satanic powers, whether these are the fallen angels, whether this is the Watchers from the Apocrypha, right? The 70 generations that they would be imprisoned. By the way, someone calculated that the Watchers were in prison for 70 generations, and that 70 generations ended in 1900, which means that they would all rose up from that point in time and try to reclaim their little god status throughout the world, which is kind of interesting what's happening today, right? But I look at it more in the sense of the documentary movie They Live, right? Is that whatever is walking around acting like they're humans, right? These demons, I believe that they are possessive. that they're probably soulless beings walking around, I don't know, but they're very possessive of these human beings, and that they're controlling them from the shadows. They're controlling them through influence, and they're controlling them through this deep, dark cult religion that has been portrayed on this planet for a very, very long time, and that they've infiltrated every aspect of our society, and they've now infiltrated it. You were talking about Catholicism earlier, and how a lot of the people in the higher echelons of Catholicism become corrupted by this, and we know this, that pedophilia has ran rampant in Catholicism. Well, you ever notice why that when you get to that level, that they prey on not just the innocent, but the virgin innocence, the purification, because that child is the closest power, the closest source to God, right? And it's like perverting, right, God itself. And this is why they utilize that energy source, the child, and so forth, in the sacrificial sense to their God, to their demon, whoever that might be, whether it's Baal or Moloch or Satan, all derived from the same entity, right? But whoever that might be, that's why they use that level of sacrifice, and that's why it's the high priests and the witches that do that through proxy. They don't do it themselves, they do it through proxy. They always have somebody else doing the ritualistic ceremony for them because they don't want the karmic affliction that comes from it. They just want the innocent power that's going to be sacrificed to come towards them in the long run, because they believe that takes power away from the actual creator, which, guess what? That creator's infinite and you can never take its power away. Great gentleman, Len Horowitz. I haven't heard Len in a long time. I know he's fighting a few lawsuits out there, but back in the early 2000s, he did this bit on the difference between light and dark. And he goes, if I wanted to tell you the difference right now between my creator, the creator of the universe, the creator of light, the creator of all good, and darkness, I would tell you this. Walk into a room full of evil, full of darkness, full of hatred, and light a little candle, and darkness flees. But see, you can't do the opposite. You can't walk into a room full of light, love, truth, and wisdom, and righteousness, and that darkness cannot enter that room and have any effect at all on light. And that's the story that I think of when I think of the power of our creator.
Yeah. What I think about is when you were talking about these people that are perverting the religious belief system and having other people do their dirty deeds, and they just want to reap the rewards. It is going to come for them. Mm-hmm. These are the same people that say, I would rather rule in hell than to serve in heaven. That's where that comes from, the people like that. And I it's sad that they're going to get that opportunity, but they're not going to get to serve. They're not going to get to rule. Yeah. It's going to come for them, and they're going to have to answer and pay for all of that. And they're just so blind. Like you said, they're blinded. That's all they know. They don't even know they're sick. And whatever. It's really scary, some of the things you see people doing to one another nowadays, things that I can't remember in my lifetime, seeing people just so blatantly doing that kind of stuff to other people for no reason. It's just I believe what we see on TV every once in a while. You've just saw an actual demon in a person's body doing that.
Yep.
And that's the scary thing. There was a time where I thought that wasn't possible, that it was only in the spiritual realm. And I've had people that have been doing what I do a lot longer than me that I've reached out to for help, because something told me, you better make a couple of phone calls before, taking this case. And I'm thinking of a couple, like a jinn case that I had. A lot of people from a lot of different religious belief systems reach out to me. First thing I ask them is, do you go to church? Yes. Have you gone to your church to ask anybody for help? Yes. What happened? Nobody there could help me. That's why I'm calling you. I try to do what you do and research their religious belief system a little bit to maybe kind of have some understanding if there's some way that I can approach it the way I'm going to approach it anyway that will work for them. Because I know that that's the only way that's going to work. But I've been told by superiors, mentors that I admire, to back off of certain cases, like the theory behind some of these pure evil, non-human entities that have been around since before the beginning of time, that have no fear of God and they're just going to chew you up and spit you out.
Yep.
And the some Dybbuk box cases where I've had even rabbis that have been
Dybbuk. That's a Hebrew word, right?
Yeah.
Spell it backwards. What does it spell?
I'm almost afraid to.
COVID. COVID. Yeah.
Dybbuk. I don't believe there's a V in it. I believe it's a couple of B's. Dybbuk. Dibbuk, I believe. Dybbuk. Is it Dybbuk? I believe it's two B's in there.
Hold on, I got it.
But I was advised don't take that case because there's some of these types of entities like that we are finding have some of the most seasoned, knowledgeable exorcists have not been able to battle these things successfully. And someone new to the field like me, they are just looking out for my well-being, and have said, do what you want to do, Shawn. You always do, but we're advising you to probably pass on that case, pass the information on to us, and we will send it through the network and see if how we want to approach this. That's scary too. That means that if you're up against something like that, you better be able to tap into the actual finger of God and have God be able to come down. And they always refer to the F5 tornadoes as the finger of God. You better be able to tap into that power for help, or it's not going to end well. And I know people that just throw caution to the wind and there's where that's where their lack of humility comes in. Oh, I'll be okay. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and I can face this down. I can steer this down. I will take care of this. And that's where they forget their humility. And that's one of my greatest weapons is humility in approaching these things and knowing that I absolutely have no powers. I have no magical powers, and
everything happens through God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything happens through God, and God always wins in the end, and that's the most beautiful thing that we can understand is that this is God's creation, this is God's universe, and God will always win and rule and reign. And that all these lesser deities, whatever they might be, the ones that we were talking about that have been existent since before creation of our understanding, they can try, but they'll never succeed because ultimately this is God's world. This is God's universe, and nothing can be more powerful than the Creator itself.
A lot of people, we talked about some of these people don't know they're sick. At the same time, I believe a lot of them know exactly what they're doing. I believe that somebody knows they're never going to impeach Biden because there's no way they're going to want to have Kamala in there.
Right.
The Chinese, God bless them. I pray for them too. And I hope that COVID wasn't released purposely on the world. But the flip side of that coin, if it was, they know that we're not going to push the button. No one's going to push the button.
Yeah.
Because then we all die. But they can wreak a lot of havoc and by releasing something like that. And I know there's a lot of people right now listening that are probably going, you're reaching now, Rev. But there's just as many people out there that are going, you're not reaching, Rev, because that's still evil on a minor level. And the reason why I say these things is because having been in the presence, like go into that dark room and light a candle, once you're up close and personal to that stuff, you know that, like I said, I can't adequately put into words the level of what that is. That is just so. It's like, you've come face to face with a real life Hannibal Lecter, who's got the power of a god, of an angel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, in that's the beautiful thing, is that we have that power as well, because the God works through us, and God would never put us in that situation if we're not able to handle it and defeat it.
Yeah, you might be hearing from me again in the future.
Well, I sure hope so. I absolutely love this. This is a great conversation.
I've just had some people where the wind is taken out of my sail when I've won such a meaningful battle and brought somebody back from, talon by talon, have taken them, the claws out of people and pulled them back from wherever they were getting drugged to, a bad place, and helped them turn their lives around, to only hear from them years later, back into the same old crap again. And I just don't know why. I mean, what brings that umbilical cord back? I severed it once, and sometimes it grows back. Well, it doesn't let them go. It makes you think it let them go.
Yep.
It makes them think they were let go, when in fact they weren't.
Well,
and because they didn't continue to work on it, they allowed the umbilical cord to regrow again and let that stuff back into their lives.
Now, kind of give you one context of that, you just talked about a jinn. And then in this type of religious philosophy, they have these the blood rings that they wear. Now, these are very, very religious instruments. They're passed down through family and family member and so forth. But you can see a lot of Muslims wearing these big red stone rings. Now, one of the things is this actually the story of Aladdin. Aladdin was a jinn who was stuck in a lamp. He was actually stuck in a ring. And the ring is, well, you go into Lord of the Rings. This whole thing with Sauron, right? That they can latch on to physical objects very much the same that they can latch on to symbols. The symbols can be gateways as well as physical objects can be gateways. And so sometimes when you're maybe looking at one of these possessions, a jinn or a demon or whatever it might be, is go through and say, hey, is there any old type of artifact in this house? Is there any type of jewelry that was handed down from grandma or grandpa or something like that? Because that entity, that attachment might have been there, and grandpa just might have been very strong-minded and had good faith that that thing couldn't penetrate him. But now grandson has it, and that demon's like, I'm going in. I don't care. I'm doing it, right?
Yeah, I hate to laugh, but that's number 2 on the list on my intake form. Is one, is anybody dabbling in the dark arts, devil worship, any of that stuff? Yep. Or is anybody a collector of antiquities, and has anybody brought home something weird that you have perhaps seen move or levitate, or one day was there, one day was gone, then appeared back again, or you get bad vibes off of it? Yep. You think somebody might have brought something home that had a bad attachment? All that's real too. I have so many people every day that say, if they hear me talk about all of the items that have been given to me that people didn't want in their homes anymore because they believe there was something bad attached to them, and I bring them here and I put my version of a binding spell on them and some prayers and keep them here. And it was funny how you the example you gave was, grandpa was able to have that around because it couldn't penetrate him. Yeah. Grandson, no. I get them here, and my wife and I are fine. But where they were at, they wreaked havoc. People think that's silly and it doesn't happen, but no,
that does.
Why would you? Someone says, why would a demon want to attach to an object for eternity? Well, you'll have to ask one if you ever run into one, and I hope you don't ever get the opportunity to have to ask that question. I don't know the answer to that, but it happens. It really happens.
Some of them are forsaken to them. Some of them were forsaken to symbols. They're trapped within symbols. They're trapped within objects. So they can only haunt or demonize anybody who's attached to that various symbol. Now, another thing is traumatic events and symbols or objects attached to traumatic events. Let's say a woman went through a really, really nasty divorce, right? And she kept her wedding ring. Now, that wedding ring is a portal of energy that something can latch onto and be utilized against her. because it's that moment, it's that point of vulnerability within her life, that point of trauma within her life, and they can easily attach onto that. But mostly, and that goes back to that whole thing with relational energy, that the attention intention aspect of it is when we connect to other people or things, that line of attention needs to be severed, and that means that all symbols and artifacts who are attached to it as well need to be thrown out, discarded of, or properly reduced to their basic elemental forms. A ring like that, I would melt it down and put it into something else and just get rid of it. Don't put it in your closet and hope that it goes away, because you're still attached to it energetically. You have to do the old alchemical process of transmutation. You have to transmute that which is undesirable into that which is desirable.
You know what's hard? You bring that up, and I think of religious items, artifacts, relics that have been touched by evil. Mm-hmm. Like I think of a woman that said, she's taking me through her home, and she says, "Oh, my statue of Mary, Sacred Heart of Mary, is gone. It was on my mantle." And we searched the whole house and couldn't find it. And then I found it going on the top, hidden under some clothes on the top shelf of the master bedroom closet as I'm going up into the attic to do part of my cleansing. And it was mangled. It looked like it had been burned, like one of the hands were melted, the other hand was like bit off. And I've had two rules of thought. Some people say, no, that should have been put into a hole, blessed, and then burned, destroyed, yep, and covered up. I have a hard time doing that to these what were once sacred objects.
Return them to holy ground.
I usually still bind them. They're here, yeah, but I usually do my form of binding and keep them, because I have this. Am I performing something sacrilegious myself with destroying this item, which was once so holy, that something so evil touched and did that to it? Was evil not able to totally destroy it because it was representation of something so holy? And so I don't want to buy into that. Let me bind that. I don't display them anymore, because I believe that gives energy to it.
Yeah.
You're allowing people to see whatever this thing did to this object. So I don't display it, but I bind it and I keep them in a blessed place, because I don't want to defile them anymore or do something sacrilegious. But I have people in my field that feel the way you do, that no, you have to destroy them in a certain way.
Well, if it's someone other than you, if it's someone who doesn't have the knowledge and the understanding of these objects, and it's someone that's being haunted or possessed by something, I would highly recommend, hey, do you have any items that are connected to trauma? Do you have any items that are old artifacts? Anything like this? And remove it from the household first. Secondarily is, people live on portals of energy. There's different energy constructs on the planet where that object might not have any effect living in Illinois, but you move to California and all of a sudden you got a demon running around, right? And so there's certain aspects
and they absorb it and they hold on to that stuff. And a lot of this demonic, they will lie around in stasis, and wait for years and years and years. You never can be sure. That's why it's so important these people don't go back to their old ways, and it's just heartbreaking when that happens. And it happens more times than you would like to know, or that I would even care to admit, because I know exorcists, and once again they let pride enter a little bit, and they forget their humility, and they think, they don't want to let you know about so and so that I performed an exorcism on. Now they may be possessed again. They don't want to tell you that because they think that reflects bad on them.
Yeah.
Not at all.
No.
Come on, we're just not at all. But let's keep the lines of communication open, and let's have a healthy conversation about where we might have gone wrong. We, not just you, but where we, and let's try and fix it.
Right. A lot of I think people going back to that old ways. It's the same thing if you look at drug addiction and so forth, right? You become who you surround yourself with, all these different aspects. But it comes about through an inner knowledge and inner understanding of the self, and a susceptibility to this psychological warfare or this trauma of society. That people fall back into those old habits because I like to explain it like this, Shawn, is if I ask a person who they are, right? Who are you? How do you define yourself? Because I always have to define words or things. Most people are going to tell me, oh, I was on the high school football team. I was a captain. I went to college. I graduated with a master's degree, and I married my high school sweetheart, and 3 kids, and that's who I am. No, that's who you were, right? We shouldn't identify ourselves as who we were, because if we don't like the outcomes of our current actions, that is because of the accumulation of who we were. We're still acting in the accumulation of who we were, and if we do that, we're going to keep on getting the same results that we had before, right? So we have to identify ourselves as someone different, as someone new, as becoming someone, right? This is where knowledge and understanding come in. And the example I give to people is I say, instead of figuring out that, insanity's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, that's kind of how people define themselves, as I was this, now I'm this. Well, that's the same thing, right? But instead, think about it like this. Let's say that we fast forward the world and it's many, many years in the future, and you finally pass on to, past the veil, and you go up there and there's St. Peter and give him the knuckles, and you pass on down, you're walking up to God, and you see a guy standing next to God, and you're looking and it's like, well, that looks like a lot like me, except he's a little bit thinner, right? And you get up there next to God, and you're looking at this image of yourself. And you're God, like, God, who's that? And God's like, well, that's you, but that's my image of you. That's God's image of what he created you to be. That's the person that God created that had all the accomplishments, all the things that you ever wanted, the big house, the nice car, all the glorious things that you ever wished for in your life that God wanted you to have. That's who's standing next to God. And God asks you, the way you're going to judge your life right now is I want you to look at that person and everything they had and everything they accomplished and everything they did and compare it to your life now. Did you live up to that? And mostly, the answer is going to be no, right?
Yeah.
So for most people, that's who you want to become. You want to become that image of God that's standing next to God, that God is going to judge you based upon. You want to become that person. And when you give people that process, that vision, they don't want to go back and be who they were. They now want to go forth and become who they are becoming. And that person that's standing next to God.
Yeah, it's like, this is the first day of the rest of your life.
That's it.
There's never too late to change, and you can become the person you're becoming because you're constantly evolving and becoming something different all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the vision of God, though, right? And we have to. And so when you give people that process and you show them that process, it's really hard to go backwards from there. It's really hard to fall back into those old habits because now you're looking at it in the sense is, man, I'm going to be judged upon this on my final day within the seat of God. I want to become that person that God wants me to become. And if people truly have faith and conviction, they'll live up to that. They'll at least attempt to live up to that. They'll do their best in living up to it.
At least attempt. And if you, in good faith, fall a little short of it, you'll be forgiven. If you are truly a God-fearing person and constantly ask for forgiveness and are truly sorry for the wrongs that you commit, and go to like in my circumstance, go to confession and go to mass and receive Holy Communion and all that. It's a big part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. This is a heck of a conversation. I can't wait to have you back on this show again. We're going to have, we went almost an hour over. I'm okay with that. This was fun as heck.
No issues with me. It's just, it's just another night for me. Actually, I'm taking the whole month off of December from both my podcast and my radio show.
Oh, cool.
To finally do a little traveling, enjoy the holidays with the wife, who I can never get to take a vacation. Hopefully I can get her to take a little one. Take one over the holidays, and then just start a fresh 2022, which I am confident is going to rock on so many levels. And I'm inviting everybody that knows me and loves me to come along for the ride, and you go from there. I'll come back anytime I haven't bored you to death.
Definitely
And
not.
you want me to come back on, I'll check. And I got to get you on one of mine or both of my shows
Yeah.
to talk about some of this stuff, because you have a wonderfully interesting, eye-opening, attention-getting story yourself. Those are some of the best stories I love, are people that have been where you are and have become the person you are today. And that's all God. I hope
It
you don't
is.
mind me saying that, but
No,
it is all God.
Absolutely.
And I'm just, I'll continue to be in constant prayer over where the world is at right now, because do you remember seeing how beautiful the world looked after the pandemic? After the world went into lockdown for like 3 months, and the satellite pictures of what the world looked like before we went into the lockdowns, and then after 3 months of that, how much more beautiful the world looked. And then, you go back to seeing satellite photos of the world, and now that with everything that's going on, that's just it's crazy, man. It's, we got to work on it. Me too. I got to work on it too.
It's the ultimate goal of life, is to develop that relationship of knowing yourself that brings you closer to God, and knowing God the best that you can and as well as you can. And if you do that, He will guide you to where you need to be. You just have to have faith in that process.
Absolutely, brother. I'll take this opportunity to tell you that I love you. I respect you. I'll have you on the prayer list. And just keep doing what you do, man. And I'm going to reach out to you when I start booking dates for both my shows next year. I would love to get you on both of them. Anytime you want me to come back, man, just give me a heads up and let me know.
Oh, we're gonna book you tomorrow. So, so Amber will be reaching out to book you for down the road, but she will reach out tomorrow to do it. I guarantee it.
All right.
Because
brother.
this is awesome. I had a great time. You guys, Reverend Shawn Wittington, you can find him at www.ghost-b-gone.biz. It is all linked up in the description box below. He is also linked up with his own profile on redpills.tv. You can see them right there on the homepage, as well as it's going out in the chat. Reverend Shawn, thank you so much, my friend. Much love to you. Thank you so. God bless, man. And we can't wait to see you again. Everybody else will be going to the subscription show, Fringe After Dark, in 10 minutes from now at 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, midnight Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to go to do that, go down over to socialredpill.com and find the information there. It'll all be posted. Much love, respect. God bless everybody. Take care. We'll see you guys soon.
Good night, everybody.